Off proceedings, first by saying hello. Really pleased that you could join us for this session. This is the third in a series of short and sharp briefing events that we're putting on to look at some issues of community and sustainability that are being addressed by us, by Groundwork, and by some of the partners that we work alongside. My name's Graham Duxbury, and I'm the Chief Executive of Groundwork, and my job here is to do some scene setting, talk about our strategy, try and help explain why we're talking about these issues and what we're doing about them. I'm delighted that we'll be joined then by our friend and colleague Anita from Arup, who will be talking about some of these issues from their perspective, and then my colleague Hannah, who'll be hopefully bringing some of this subject matter to life with some examples of how we deliver support in this area. So these sessions are designed to be deliberately very informal, so you can contribute however you like. There's the usual chat opportunities should you want to post some comments or questions in the chat. We should, hopefully, if everybody sticks to time, have enough time at the end for a few questions if you want to be brave enough to put your hand up and appear on screen and ask a question. Other than that, you can just sit back, listen, take it in, contact us afterwards if you wish to. And we'll be contacting you afterwards just to share the recording and to find out if there's anything else that you want to know from us or about us. So I think that's the formalities. As usual on these events, no fire alarms planned for this event. So if you hear one going off, it's your toast burning, not mine. And you can deal with it as you wish. Right, so if we move on to the first slide, Gary, we'll be using Gary as our prompt to move us through the presentations. I just want to start with a bit of background for those who may be new to Groundwork and explain how we came into being and generally what it is we're trying to achieve. So we began life as a charity more than 40 years ago now against a backdrop in the UK of economic decline and industrial restructuring. But it was also a time, late 70s, early 80s, when we had the first stirrings of consciousness about something called global warming. It was roughly the same time when Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth were expanding their networks in the UK. And we were set up specifically with a mission to support communities impacted by all of those issues to address the physical signs of decline in their neighbourhoods, but to use that as a springboard for social and economic recovery. But it was also an opportunity to bring to life the local to global philosophy, the principle that if you look after the environment on your doorstep, then you're more likely to think about, care about, and act on those broader environmental challenges that we were just waking up to, as I say, in the 70s and early 80s. There were some principles that were imbued in our mission and the way in which we were set up to go about things. The first of which is that we did nothing on our own. So some of the kind of big, overwhelming structural problems that we were attempting to address clearly can't be addressed by any single organisation, let alone a relatively small charity. So partnership was central to the Groundwork concept when it was established. Second principle is that we were there to build the capacity of people and communities to identify and address the issues that they wanted to address in their local areas. And we were putting our professional skills at the disposal of local communities to take action in a way that made sense to them. And the third principle was about getting stuff done. So a really pragmatic focus on what could be achieved in the here and now and how practical action would make a real difference in terms of people's motivation, aspiration, their sense of being able to do something about the issues that they were facing. If we move on, Gary, to the next slide. A lot has obviously changed in the last 4 decades, but I think those principles have stayed intact throughout our organisation. So we're still focused on places, both the physical, environmental fabric of those places, but also the social infrastructure within those places. So the opportunities for people to meet and organise and take action as a collective. We're still focused on delivering recovery and regeneration, stimulating economic activity in places that may feel left behind by the mainstream, and increasingly connecting people with economic opportunity in a changed and a transitioned economy in terms of green skills net zero, etc. And we're still equipping and empowering people to take action on issues that matter to them in the here and now. But what's really interesting in the here and now is that environmental issues connected with climate change are some of those issues that people are very keen to take action on. And all of that stays within this kind of framework of integrated action. So trying to deliver social, economic, and environmental outcomes at the same time through the same investment in the same place, because those things are completely interconnected and interdependent. Move on, Gary, to give people a quick illustration of what we look like and how we're organized and how we operate. You'll see that Groundwork is 15 different organizations held together in a federal construct by some complex internal wiring that need bother no one but us. We can obviously obsess about it endlessly, but effectively what that means is that we can operate at a national scale when that makes sense. Oh, there's a comment there from Karen that we can't see the slideshow. Is that a common issue, or is that okay? All right, we're concluding that might be at your end, Karen. Sorry about that. So it means we can operate at national scale when that makes sense, but we'll reach into local communities where it's important to get kind of deep into the warp and weft of communities at a local level. Next slide, please, Gary. Those 15 organisations over the last 6 months have agreed a strategy for our collective ambition, and this is what that strategy looks like. The simple version on a page. It sets out what we want to deliver. It sets out how we'll go about our work, what we feel is important about the way in which we'll deliver, and it sets out how we intend to improve our own quality, our own capability, and our own capacity to make the changes that we feel we can and should make in society. I won't talk about all of this, but I would like to draw your eye to the right-hand column where we talk about our goals. So these are our 4 areas of collective action across our Groundwork network, in which we've decided we either want to increase our impact, or we want to grow the scale of what we do, we want to innovate to find some new solutions, or we want to build new connections and new relationships so that we can again broaden the change that we're able to bring about in society. So today's focus, going to my last slide, is on the goal that we've set ourselves around helping people respond and adapt to climate change. If you could move the slide on, Gary, to that one. So on one level, everything that Groundwork does and has ever done, you could argue has been about climate change in some way, but that's seldom our starting point. So more of the time we're having conversations with people about what matters to them now in their life, in their neighbourhood, in their ability to find work, in their ability to improve their personal prospects and the fabric of their communities. But increasingly, as I mentioned earlier, those are conversations that have some kind of connection with the way in which our climate is changing, whether it's to do with energy, the cost of energy, whether it's to do with water quality, water scarcity, whether it's to do with air pollution, whether it's to do with biodiversity or your ability to access green spaces, whether it's about a changing economy and the skills that you need to thrive in a net zero economy, or whether it's about public health issues. All of them increasingly have some kind of connection with the way in which we're mitigating and adapting to climate change. And we know, going back to our kind of social, economic and environmental integrated mission, that climate change impacts first and worst on those people that have least choice and least protection in society. This has been true on a global scale for many years. We're beginning to recognise that connection much more obviously within the UK. We also know that there's unfairness and injustice in the distribution of environmental benefits and environmental harms and hazards. And we also know that more and more people are feeling more worried and anxious about what the future might hold. And the answer to that is to provide people with some agency, the ability to do something practical about those big, slightly overwhelming and sometimes quite far away issues that they envisage. So Groundwork's approach, going back to our core principles, is to try and help people take practical action on some of those issues, whether it's practical action to support mitigation work, but also highlighting the need for adaptation, for being prepared, and for being more resilient. And this is playing out in a number of ways across our network, and some of these are areas of growth and potential new opportunities. So one of those is about our homes and our behaviours in the homes and how we retrofit buildings, how we improve energy efficiency, water efficiency, and how we learn to live differently with those new technologies and in upgraded buildings. Some of it's about the physical fabric of places and the ability of those places to withstand different weather patterns and extreme rainfall and excess heat and so on and so forth. Within both of those, there are jobs to be had. There are emerging economies around adapting both buildings and adapting places and making our communities more resilient. But then the third element for us is about that community level support. So how do you help people build the networks, build the capacity, build the knowledge and skills so that they're better able to respond when there are emergency events, as we expect there to be more of, and that they can work more as part of a system with the public sector and with businesses to prepare for and respond to those emergency events. So those are some of the things that are kind of coming to the fore in our strategy, in our discussions with partners, in our developing services and programs and projects. And I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to hand the talking stick to Anita, who will hopefully give us a slightly different perspective on some of those issues, coming at it from the point of view of a business operating at global and local scale. I'll hand over, Anita.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to my Groundwork colleagues for inviting me today. Do you know what I'm going to say is not that different, unsurprisingly. And I think that is the first point I'd like to make today. We are all in this together, and we're working on the same issues. The challenge and the invitation to all of us is to work out how we can best collaborate and make the most of the skills that we each bring to that and the communities that we have access to. Can I have the first slide, please, Gary? Arup, as some of you may know who we are. We are a global firm. We're a collective of designers, engineers, specialists. There's 18,500 of us working in around 140 countries. This is big, but climate change, we know, is a global problem, but it plays out locally. So the reason I started with this slide is that our founder, Arup, was a very interesting man. Very early on, before businesses were talking about corporate social responsibility or anything like that, he said, this is what I want my firm to be about. It's about a social conscience, but it's also about establishing partnerships of equals. Can I have the next slide, please? Climate change, as you would expect from a firm that is specializing in all aspects of sustainable development, is at the core of what we do. We know that climate change impacts are already projected to cost the global economy around $54 trillion by 2040. And while that is an enormous amount of money, what we're not fully accounting for are the cost to human lives, especially to those communities who tend to be disproportionately affected by the impacts of climate change, but don't always have a voice. And this is also why I think working together with organizations like Groundwork, it's really important to make sure that people have a voice. So our climate change services span the whole spectrum from policy planning to design, engineering solutions, protecting infrastructure, critical infrastructure, major assets, working with local authorities, with international agencies, with governments, with private sector developers, and last but not least, with communities. Can I have the next one, please? But we also know that our commercial work doesn't reach all the communities that we want to and feel we must engage with. And I'm really proud to lead Arup's global community engagement function, which is our pro bono technical assistance program. And Arup is, like in many other respects, a little bit different from other businesses. So our community engagement program does not engage in any transactional kind of activities. So we give and offer our whole spectrum of expertise. So all the engineering disciplines, all the professional services, the technical services that we provide to clients are on offer to communities. Working with partners, our focus globally is on the poorest and the most marginalized communities. And we've chosen 3 thematic priorities that allow us to play to our strength, but we've also defined those in consultation with those communities, because that's what comes up, that's what came up as priorities. And as you would expect from a firm that has many engineers and other technical specialists, infrastructures, and I'm deliberately using the plural here, feature quite strongly. And that includes anything from transport, green, blue, social, and digital infrastructures, and of course, affordable, resilient housing and shelter as another one, and as an overarching priority, reducing inequities. The next one, please. Just to give you an idea of what that looks like in numbers, we invest between £5 and £5.5 million each year in this work. And we're very proud that our projects also help our partners to secure additional funds. And what I'm particularly proud of is that we have every year over 2,000 of our members. I should say that Arab is an employee-owned company, so we don't have staff, we have members, have contributed to projects. And the hours that we're capturing, again, that may look like a lot, but there's a lot more to that, because what we can't capture is the personal investment that colleagues make. It's the emotional investment, and it's the additional contributions they make that don't appear in any of these graphics. And we work with over 200 partners. And these are not just ad hoc relationships. A lot of those are long-standing relationships. And we're continuing to learn about their work and hopefully inspire them to do more with us as part of that. Next one, please. So for today, because this is a UK-focused event, I brought 2 examples. The first one is a commercial piece of work, and it's the Just Transition Plan that colleagues did for the London Borough of Newham. So Newham is the most deprived borough in the country, even though it is in wealthy London. And our work there was really to support the local authority and its residents in reducing the carbon footprint for individuals, but also across the piece. But alongside that, the borough has very enlightened leadership, I would say, and has had for many years. There was a clear recognition that some of the most marginalized communities within the borough needed special support. So there is a special focus on enabling those communities to benefit from all the actions that come out of the plan. Can I have the next slide, please? The second one is similar and feels quite groundworky. Somebody who knows groundwork well. This was the Climate Action Plan for Lambeth Council. And as part of that, the borough were very clear that they also wanted to see, rather than just looking at data analysis and number crunching, they also wanted to see some engagement on the ground. We were working with a partner called We Rise, well established in the area, on engaging young people around, and this is again something that will resonate with Groundwork, around green skills offer. So this is to enable those young people to transition from school to employment opportunities. And the reason I've chosen those examples is that they, to me, highlight how our skills are complementary and also what the opportunities are. Because the one thing we're learning, and I think it's fair to say we're learning that on almost every project, commercial and otherwise, is that we cannot do this alone. And I think, Graham, you said a similar thing. So this is, and I think we all have a responsibility, and certainly for Arab, we feel that quite strongly, to find the right people to help us deliver on the ground. Because for us as consultants to develop plans, come up with designs and all of that is only the first step. The next step has to be how we embed those plans on the ground. And for that, we need to work with partners who have a reach into those communities, who speak the language, who are embedded, who are trusted partners, both to the communities and to us. And with that, I'll finish. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much, Anita. Really appreciate you taking the time to come and share some of that with us and finding examples that are so relevant. And as you say, you resonate very much with some of the stuff that we're trying to do around our network. We could, in terms of illustrating and providing some examples of what Groundwork is actually doing in this space, we could have picked on countless examples because, as I say, just about everything that Groundwork does at the moment touches on some of these issues in one way or another. But we were very keen to showcase and highlight one particular program that Hannah's going to talk to us about, because I think this is kind of quite at the cutting edge of what Groundwork's doing, bringing us that expertise and that experience about engaging communities, but engaging communities in particular kinds of conversations, this one being about resilience and being prepared for what might come in the future. So I'm going to let Hannah explain more about the program that she's leading.
Thanks very much, Graham. Yeah, and hello everyone. Great to be here this morning. So yeah, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about Communities Prepared, which is a programme that I manage. I work for Groundwork South, but this programme is very much one that is operating across the country and therefore sort of involves a whole number of sort of Groundwork trusts, and we work closely with Groundwork UK as well. Next slide, please, Barry. Just to very briefly explain, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background to Communities Prepared for those that aren't familiar. Sort of touch on how we work and who we work with, and then just share a couple of stories that have been emerging from some of the communities that we've been working with before touching briefly on where we're going next. So yeah, if you could skip on to the next slide, and actually the next one as well, thanks. So yeah, we're primarily funded by the National Lottery Community Fund and have been since 2016. But yeah, this programme actually began much earlier than that. It sort of stems from some of this quite extensive flooding in Cornwall back in sort of 2010, 2011, whereby some of the Cornish partners who remain really involved in our project now established a real gap around community resilience and community preparedness for flooding events, and recognising that actually there was a huge potential there as well for communities to be better prepared, to be better able to kind of help themselves, especially in some of those areas as you know, as can be found in rural parts of Cornwall, where the emergency services may not be able to arrive sort of particularly quickly if a flood or other event occurs. So our programme sort of emerged from that, emerged from a DEFRA Pathfinder a few years later, and has been run by Groundwork since 2016. And yeah, we work very closely with a whole range of partners, including the Environment Agency. We work with the Red Cross. We have part of our project funded by Aviva, and we work closely with them on that. And at the regional level, we work very closely with local resilience forums, and then right down to local authorities, voluntary and community sector partners, and then obviously working directly with communities themselves. And the programme's really founded on providing that training and support, those gaps that were identified well over 10 years ago now, providing that training and support to communities to help them feel better prepared for flooding and other challenges that they might be faced with, and better able to respond and then recover from those as well. And we've grown the programme from those early days of focusing on flooding to now think about a whole range of emergencies and hazards that communities might face. So we talk about snow, we talk about heat waves, drought, storms, and we're kind of growing that as the programme continues to sort of be rolled out, as well as we sort of see that the number of kind of challenges that communities might be facing are certainly growing. And how we do that is through, we have a whole range of live sessions that we deliver, partly through Zoom, but we do also work with communities in person as well. And we also have a website that's got lots of content on there for communities to take a look at. Next slide, please. So, and you can click through to the next bit as well. Thank you. So, yeah, as I said, there's a whole range of challenges that communities are facing, and we're seeing in terms of that context that the need for the project that we're running, the need for this kind of work, is ever growing. More and more communities, obviously across the world, but also even if we just think about the UK, are facing challenges that they hadn't previously faced. More floods, more storms and severe weather events. And then obviously now, as the weather finally starts to improve, we're increasingly aware that we'll then be hitting that time where communities start to worry about droughts and heat waves and things like that as well. So there's an increasing need for this kind of work. And then if you go on to the next slide, please, Gary, what we're finding as well is that there is starting to be a growing momentum in this space as well. So you can see on the left-hand side here, we've obviously got that need around climate adaptation and that kind of momentum towards more communities thinking about this. But at the government level as well, we've got this narrative around whole of society resilience, where, for those of you that sort of are familiar, the government released a UK resilience framework December 2022, which set out a very strong narrative and ambition, but the kind of the how this kind of whole of society goal will be met wasn't particularly clear. And we can see a really strong role for the kind of training and support that we provide to communities to really fit in with that ambition and help that to be met. So at the minute, you know, we're working very much within that context of things are heading in the right direction in terms of momentum, but the need is ever increasing. And hopefully that means there'll kind of continue to be a role that we can sort of play to contribute to this space over the coming years. Next slide, please, Gary. Thank you. And the next one, thanks. So what we do, I just touched on briefly at the start, we have a whole range of courses that we offer to communities. Communities can do that in their own time. They can go on a website, they can download that content, they can do the sort of self-led learning, and that's us trying to be as flexible as possible to recognise that whilst during COVID, everyone had a lot of time, we found that huge numbers of people were coming along to sort of Zoom sessions that we were running. Obviously, as lives get busier again, actually we want to be flexible and enable people to kind of use this learning when it suits them. So we've got our website, we've got all the content on there, but we do also run sessions that people can join on Zoom. And as I said, we do in some work in person as well. We are also, alongside our kind of core offer of support to communities, we have a project that I mentioned with Aviva and the British Red Cross, whereby we're piloting a concept of community resilience hubs, working closely with local resilience forums and other partners to really identify either existing kind of community locations that could serve as a hub in the case of an emergency, or to support the preparedness of a community as well. Or where those don't exist, we're working with communities to think about what hub locations could be like. And that's proved really interesting to find areas like libraries that are coming up as kind of potentially hub locations, community centres, churches, a range of different venues that could work for that. So we're seeing, I suppose it's just to summarise that point, we're seeing that our kind of core offer is growing with lots of different add-on projects as more kind of partners and stakeholders that we work with are aware that this is something that they want to they need to and want to be a part of. Next slide, please, Gary. And here's just some of the examples of some of the partners that we work with. And you'll see it's across the private and public and voluntary sectors, and of course including Groundwork logo on there, because as I said at the start, we work very closely with other Groundwork trusts as well. But yeah, it's been great over the last few years to build quite a lot of these relationships from the ground to really see how we can all work together in a more collaborative way. I think something that Anita touched on really sort of resonated with me as well, in that we are all in this together and we're all sort of working towards the same goal. So it makes far more sense to work collaboratively on this and to kind of work towards these shared goals and find ways to do that together. I know that I'm in a very small team. We don't have the capacity to do everything we'd like to do. So on the next slide, please, Gary. So just to give an example of how kind of we're working collaboratively and now growing this kind of family of projects that Communities Prepared has, and I won't go into detail on this, but you can just see that from our core program, it's kind of spread with lots of different elements and different ways of thinking and different partners that we've worked with. And I'm obviously quite keen to see where that goes from here. Next slide, please. So just, I wanted to give two little stories, and apologies for using a photo of not a real person, but this first story is from someone who we work with, an external evaluator, and she shared this insight with us from some of the interviews that she's been doing recently. So she's not been able to tell me who this person is or where they're from, but it's one of the communities we've been working with, and I thought it was quite a nice one to share. What we're seeing is that community members that we work with are feeling more confident to take the lead in their community. They're feeling more informed, and that helps them feel better able to respond to the challenges they're facing. They're starting to put plans in place that help them to kind of act in a more coordinated, organised, kind of planned way that means that that response that they're part of can be more effective. And they're starting to feel better connected to each other as well, and to partners that they work with. And this is obviously increasingly important in the kind of situations we're facing in this country with increasing climate-related events. So John, not his real name, has told Sarah, our evaluator, so he's been in the community for a long time. He's very active. He's involved in the Rotary, Parish Council, I think, as well. He's a long-standing community member. There was a gas explosion in their community, which led to residents needing to be evacuated in one of the areas. But whilst he recognised that there are plenty of people in the community that are quite competent, people aren't really aware, they weren't really aware of the challenges that they might face, and they weren't really aware of what they could do in that situation, and they weren't particularly sort of prepared for the challenge they're facing, or indeed ones that they might face in the future. So learning from that, John found our resources and our training offer, and he came along to some of our live sessions as well as downloading some of our content. And he sort of fed back to Sarah that helped him feel better informed and gave him that confidence to start having some conversations within his parish council and with the district councillors to sort of drum up their local support. And in doing so, he was able to then kind of work with them to start to put together an emergency plan for the community, which would help them, obviously, in the future to better respond to those sort of other challenges that might occur. And through doing that, he's now able to get communities to start thinking about his community, to start thinking about their behaviour and how they could kind of come on board and work with him. So quite a positive story to kind of tell there, really. And I've got one other I wanted to share. So Gary, next slide, thank you. So this one, Lisa, who shared her story with us as part of our previous sort of evaluation a couple of years ago now. So Lisa's part of an emergency response team in her community in Cambridgeshire. And that emergency response team has existed for a while, recognising that they're a rural community. They have been affected by flooding on a number of occasions, and they know that they don't get a lot of support from the emergency services quickly because of their location. And she's involved in her parish council. She's the chair, and her parish clerk said to her, "I've heard of this programme, come along, have a look." And she found that, the resources were valuable, the training was useful, and she also really found it helpful to learn from other people's experiences. And that's something we're finding a lot in this project, that where communities have the opportunity to share with each other what they've learned and what they've experienced, is hugely beneficial, sometimes more beneficial than us just being able to provide training. In doing so, she was able to work with her community to update their community emergency plan. She's built better relationships with the council and other stakeholders. She's got a much better understanding of what the role of local volunteers can be and how that sort of aligns with the role of emergency responders. And she's more confident to lead her team as well. So the next time it flooded, they were able to provide much more timely advice for householders. So she felt that, she could really see that they'd learned and they were able to be better prepared. So just to wrap up, just one more slide, I think, if you sort of skip on to one more from there, thank you. So it's quite a key part of our project at the moment. We're coming to the end of our lottery funding and working out what we can do next. And we're certainly sort of exploring different funding options going forward. And we don't want communities to prepared to sort of fizzle out at this point, when actually it's probably becoming increasingly important. So we're looking at how we can make sure that our online offer is further developed and is meeting the needs of communities. We're looking to target our support better. We really recognise that people who want to engage with us are probably those that are already a bit more active and a bit more interested and probably have a bit more capacity to do so. So we want to think about how we can support those that are worse affected by emergencies, probably harder for us to reach, and really think about that element of our programme. We want to plan more strategically, and we want to continue to raise our profile so that more people are aware of what we're doing and how that kind of fits in with what's going on in the external context, how government developments, how we can fit in with all of that as well. And yeah, very much planning for our future and thinking about the funding that we can secure to do that. So I'll leave it there. I think I've done my bit. There was one more slide, which was just my contact details, and our sort of social media channels. And so, yeah, if these slides are being circulated afterwards, feel free to reach out and get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hannah. That's brilliant. And always reliably ending on a pitch, which is never a bad thing to do. So thank you for that, and well done. So as I said at the outset, there's no requirement from here on in for people to engage in any particular way. We are on time. We said we'd let you go by 9:45, so we do have 5 minutes or so. Should anybody want to ask specific questions or start a discussion, feel free to use a chat. As I said, feel free to drop us a line afterwards. Because it sometimes takes people a minute or two to think about that. One thing that I was quite keen on just exploring with both Anita and Hannah, as we've got you, is we've had lots of experience of working with businesses in this space over quite a long time in Groundwork, and my sense is that historically businesses have engaged in climate change related activity either because it's good for their market positioning, it's good for the brand, it's good for the image, or because they're being regulated to do so, and therefore they have to meet certain requirements. My sense is on the adaptation and resilience side of the climate change conversation, more and more businesses are actually recognizing this is likely to impact on their core business. It's a business continuity issue. It's a longer term profitability issue. From your dealings with businesses at different levels, are you seeing any change in the way businesses are engaging in this kind of conversation or the kinds of things that they want to support? And is that kind of driver changing?
Is that one for me or for Hannah?
Yeah, well, you go first. You've unmuted first, Anita. Have a.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the role of business in this conversation is changing, and it's changing rapidly. So I would agree with your last point. There's at the same time we're seeing a real backlash against businesses trying to claim the credit for all the positive impact they're having. So it's a bit of a balancing act. And I feel that working for Arup, I speak from a position of luxury, because we've dealt with those questions a long time ago, before they were even part of the public debate. So we are a little bit different in that. And having said that, there is still always a need to reinforce the point I made earlier about relationships of equals. And that to me is the critical aspect of those conversations, because it is about business continuity. But we have to learn that we need to step into different types of relationships where we're not a consultant, where we're engaging as an equal partner, where we're learning about different sectors in completely different ways. So I think that is a challenge for all of us and for businesses, because we also have to run our businesses. I think increasingly we're finding that our clients are asking us what we're doing in this space. And to me, that is slightly different from market positioning, because in a way that's helpful for us. But our clients are specifically saying, we want to know, as part of your technical credentials, how do you engage in that space beyond your commercial obligations? And that, again, gives us an interesting challenge. But I think it's one that I see more and more businesses stepping up to.
Yeah. Okay. And Hannah, I guess one of the partnerships you mentioned was with Aviva. I'm assuming that's not unconnected with the fact that, as some of us might have read in the papers the other day, the insurance bill for weather-related events is going up.
Yeah.
I presume that's a driver for them.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, and that partnership emerged from them kind of setting a narrative around this sustainability ambition that Aviva have had, and they wanted to help communities that they would be supporting, their customers essentially, but also wider communities to be more climate resilient. And so we were kind of responding to that narrative that they had. But yeah, definitely, I think we can see that there's momentum in that space with not just Aviva, other insurers as well, obviously thinking about what they could do around that resilience piece. At the local level as well, actually, I think we are seeing some great examples of businesses who are in that wider definition of community anyway. They're members of their community and they're affected by floods or whatever it might be, and thinking about not only what they can do to help their own business with that continuity question in mind, but also they've got space, they might have some money, they've got things that the community could kind of really benefit from as assets to help with their own resilience. So there are examples of businesses saying, actually community volunteers can store their equipment here, or their PPE, or this could be, we could provide a bit of funding to help with this resilience. So I think at both levels there, with that kind of strategic piece and the local level, there's some quite interesting examples of businesses thinking more about this.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, all right. I will just give another 10 seconds just in case anybody wants to dive in. As I said, no obligation to. So I would, I should keep an eye on the chat, shouldn't I? Sorry, Cynthia. So that's great. Thank you for your comment. No question there. Just didn't want to miss it. So I'll say thanks everybody for taking the time to join us. Hope you found that informative. For if you're a glutton for punishment, we've got another one of these, I think, in a couple of weeks' time, where we're going to be focusing more on the nature-related elements of what we do and how you connect people with nature. So do check that out on social media. Sign up if you're interested in hearing about that angle of our work. All it remains for me to do is say thank you very much indeed to Anita for taking some time to join us. Lovely to see you again. And to Hannah for giving us an insight into the Communities Prepared programme. And we'll let everybody get on with their day. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.